You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Am I right, Valve? Am I right, Capcom? Am I right, AYANEO? Oh boy, the Steam Deck has had a week, and in this week's Deck News Roundup, we're going to look at claims of games that are supposedly now breaking Steam Decks. We're also going to talk about why we should maybe say goodbye to Steam Deck for all, and then I want to tell you about Steam Deck's latest Game of the Year candidate. There is a lot to cover, so let's jump right in. In many ways, today's video is going to center around a lot of misinformation being spread on the internet.
Just lie? You really think someone would do that? Just go on the internet and tell lies?
So first, let's discuss how Capcom's latest DRM is apparently breaking Steam Decks. An alarming but now deleted Reddit post was made back on January 10th, and it was titled, "Capcom is adding DRM Enigma Protector to their back catalog of games. It prevents modding, cheat engine, and reduces performance by up to 10 to 15 FPS with stutters," end quote. Any publisher suddenly adding any DRM is cause enough for alarm and does warrant a PSA, especially when it is as harmful and detrimental as this post was claiming. The stakes are even higher for a publisher that is as well loved as Capcom. Doubly so when the Game of the Year candidate, Dragon's Dogma 2, is on the way. This DRM in particular was found to target and prevent modding rather than target and prevent piracy. Typically, DRMs like the Nuvo, which Capcom also employs, are used for the latter so that publishers can feel better about publishing on PC, even though it traditionally does very little to actually curb piracy. And so because DRM is such an easy target for gamers to rage against, well, a lot of raging was done. People theorized that Capcom was looking to nuke modding because of the infamous incident where a new Chun-Li was mistakenly shown live on stream during a Street Fighter 6 tournament thanks to a sexy mod. Others theorized that the intention on Capcom's part was even more nefarious and that Capcom were looking to sell expensive microtransactions like outfits in Street Fighter 6 and modded costumes would actually undermine this effort. It didn't help when the creators of the DRM responded in their own forums. When a concerned poster informed them of the brewing controversy, they bluntly asked, "What action do you need from us, and why do you blame us that someone use our own software?" They furthermore claimed that perhaps folks, including the OP, were just angry because you can't use cheats anymore. That is rich when the company employing this DRM recently sold cheats as a microtransaction. The controversy grew from there, with one person claiming that the DRM contained 34 virus-positive items, others claiming that it broke Steam Deck compatibility for some games, and others still going as far as to say that the Enigma DRM was bricking Steam Decks. And that last claim is when I started to suspect that maybe things were being blown out of proportion. Thankfully, I wasn't alone, and some people did deeper investigation than I did and came out with the full truth, and here's what I know. I'll leave the best summary I've seen in the description, but the gist is this. In some cases, Enigma was added months ago with no one noticing. Additionally, many types of mods are not affected by Enigma whatsoever, including foul mods and cheat engine. Mods that try to change the game's code, like debugger mods for Mega Man Battle Network, are now harder to create because of this DRM, but because this has actually been a thing for almost 3 months, the MMBN scene has been working on anti-debuggers that defeat Capcom measures. Most games with Enigma DRM do still run fine on the Steam Deck, and in the event that they encounter issues, these issues appear to be mostly unrelated to the DRM itself. For example, the performance issues that were witnessed in Resident Evil Revelations were just a bad update from Capcom that was fixed shortly thereafter. Finally, while several games are impacted with this DRM, like Capcom Arcade Stadium, Resident Evil 5, Strider, Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Collection, and the two aforementioned Mega Man Legacy Collections, one game that reportedly remains unimpeded is Street Fighter 6, which should likely put to bed the rumors that this was all started because of new Chun-Li, or perhaps even the desire to sell really expensive alternate skins. Capcom hasn't commented, so we don't know the exact motivation, but the motivation is not that important as far as I'm concerned. I'd much rather not see invasive DRM infesting our video games, especially well after release, after most people have already bought the product. Likewise, it's unfortunate that this amount of misinformation has spread so quickly. DRM is bad enough without us having to make up stuff to dunk on Capcom. This is not any one individual's fault, as I too am guilty for jumping on the bandwagon. This is something we'll all have to learn as we go along, especially if we're having vitriolic responses like review bombing and such. Interestingly, Valve also faced some hot water as they relaxed their stance on AI content in video games published to Steam and took action against 3 beloved fan projects that utilized their IP, including Team Fortress Source 2, TF2 VR, and Portal 64. This has motivated many people to say that Valve has changed, though that ignores some of the nuance involved in each of those projects, like Portal 64 utilizing Nintendo's own proprietary N64 library that goes by the name of Lib Ultra. No one asked me, but personally I don't think that Valve has changed, but I also don't see see Valve or Gabe as a hero. I see Valve as a business and corporation. Although they generally make moves or gestures that benefit the average gamer, they do so in the interest of making money and protecting their investments, not out of the goodness of their own heart. I don't see this as a new direction for Valve as much as a step in the same direction they've been headed for some time. For example, the request to take Portal 64 down, despite Nintendo not taking any specific action or even being aware, is extremely reminiscent of Valve proactively reaching out to Nintendo when the GameCube emulator Dolphin was set to be released on Steam. This, of course, eventually led to Dolphin to Steam being cancelled. Likewise, Valve has been at best aloof and at worst hostile with TF2 mods. Finally, Valve has been relatively inconsistent with their content policies on Steam for a long time, and where possible, Valve will construct the equivalent of a self-checkout line that puts the onus on the gamer to do things like report games that have copyrighted content. The point, of course, is not that I endorse these actions that Valve are taking, but simply that they have been taking them for some time now. The good news is that the developer of Portal 64 is not only taking it in stride, but feeling some relief to not have this albatross hanging over his head. This also means that his time is freed up to work on an original project, which he hopes will be both available on Steam as well as run on original N64 hardware. I think that's pretty great, and I would wager that this whole debacle got him a bigger audience for such a homebrew project than he otherwise would have had, so I think it somehow all ended up the way it was supposed to. Will you be following what this developer is doing next? Let me know in the comments. AYANEO is the third company to find themselves in a little bit of trouble this week, and there's a bit more to the story than some people may be privy to. This all unfolded last week when AYANEO promoted one of their next handhelds, the AYANEO Next Lite, saying that it comes pre-installed with the SteamOS gaming system for the first time. This was on their official announcement materials, and I saw it first reported on by GamingOnLinux.com. For many, including myself, it was immediately unclear whether this was actual SteamOS or if AYANEO was doing what many others have done and using SteamOS as a substitute for HoloISO, an open source project that aims to make SteamOS generic, installable, and redistributable such that people can get a close to official SteamOS experience. Still though, if I had to choose odds, I felt that there was a 49% chance this was HoloISO and a 51% chance that it was a version of SteamOS that was officially supported by Valve. There are three key reasons that I gave the slight edge to official Valve support. Number one, AYANEO could have been using HoloISO the entire time. Instead of using HoloISO and even in lieu of official SteamOS, AYANEO have been claiming to work on their own Linux-based operating system referred to as either AYAOS or AYANEO OS. So for Aya to suddenly announce the usage of SteamOS instead of AYAOS hinted to me a slight likelihood that it was the real deal, because again, they could have been using HoloISO for over a year if that was something they wanted to do. Number two, as recently as November, Valve has made it clear that getting SteamOS outside of the Steam Deck is very high on our list and something that they're hoping would happen soon. But they also told us that before they make a general purpose SteamOS, they probably would, quote, start with making it more available to other handhelds with a similar gamepad style controller, end quote. Of course, there are many handheld manufacturers they can choose to partner with, like Asus, MSI, Lenovo, AYANEO, GPD, and One Netbook, but the number three reason I thought this was real SteamOS is because some people behind the scenes have told me that a couple of the boutique manufacturers have had those conversations with Valve where perhaps they might use SteamOS. While those talks have fallen through, they do appear to have happened, meaning that Valve was somewhat close to working with a boutique manufacturer to bring SteamOS to some handheld PC other than the Steam Deck. But as many of you know by now, the truth all along is that AYANEO was using the term SteamOS loosely, and they are in fact using HoloISO for their handheld, the Next Lite. When I asked them specifically about SteamOS, they had this to say. 1. The SteamOS pre-installed on Next Lite is adapted and optimized by AYANEO based on HoloISO. 2. Gamers can install the Windows system themselves and download the Windows drivers from the AYANEO official website. Personally, I'm disappointed that AYANEO chose to market this as SteamOS. It seems though that they have learned their lesson and adjusted quickly. The new page for their new handheld says that the Next Lite comes pre-installed with HoloISO. They highlight a few benefits of using HoloISO over Windows, like the fact that it delivers more stable performance, aligns well with handheld gaming, and has outstanding system sleep functionality. Those points should all hold true, and I'm still looking forward to a handheld that chooses to use Linux over Windows, especially given that Aya seems like a good candidate candidate for optimizing hollow ISO for their own brand of handhelds. They've worked on Aya Space for Windows, which has nifty handheld functionality like incorporating gyro controls, a performance overlay, TDP control, and a lot more. Of course, I'm disappointed that this is not official SteamOS, but I think you can only look to Valve for the fact that SteamOS is not yet available on other handhelds. Valve have stated that getting SteamOS running on other handhelds is high on their list, but I've heard that before and we still haven't seen it, just like we haven't seen dual boot support come to the Steam Deck or a launch in Australia. Obviously, these things take time and effort. I'm not saying that Valve isn't working on these things. I'm just saying that at this point, I value the action more than the words. Aya should never have went with misleading marketing, but in lieu of a proper SteamOS experience, I am happy to see Aya give Linux a go, and I'm hopeful that it will be a net positive and maybe even give Valve some motivation to make some momentum in that direction. The last thing I'll say on the subject is that I've seen a lot of people say that Valve shouldn't support SteamOS outside of the Steam Deck or go as far as to ask why they would even consider that. I'm not going to answer that question here because it would take an entire video for me to cover that subject, but suffice it to say that I don't think Valve sees AYANEO as competition, and besides that, it doesn't matter why I think Valve should support SteamOS outside of the Steam Deck. The only thing that matters is that Valve thinks Valve should. Given that, I hope to see some progress on this in 2024. Alright, that's enough of the drama. Let's get some really exciting news for the Deck Gang, starting with Game of the Year candidate Prince of Persia: The Last Crown, getting stellar reviews and having excellent performance on Steam Deck, with many people reporting 60 FPS on the Ultra preset. As an example of the quality of this game, I can only point to this tweet from Jeff Grubb, who says it would have been number 3 on his list of games of the year for last year, a year which I don't have to remind folks was called one of the best years in gaming ever. You'd be so off to not recall the division caused by the initial trailer for this game. Looking back at it now feels like a mirage, and the reception then is a far cry for the reception now. But if you're a child of light like me and the crew too, then you would have bet like, I don't know, $1,800 on this being a banger, or at least better than Skull and Bones. Anyway, there are at least 2 big complaints. Number 1, this isn't on Steam, so you will have to trek into desktop mode to get this installed. It's not that bad, but really I'd rather not. That leads to complaint number 2, which is the always online DRM. The Ubisoft launcher has an offline mode that works, so you should be able to use that, but it is still a pain. My bigger problem with online DRM is that it means a single player game has the possibility of disappearing forever. If you want to know more about why I feel that way, I'll leave a link to a great article on the subject in the description. On the subject of games, there are a few updates I want to quickly let you know about. First of all, someone on Reddit has gotten the finals to work on the Steam Deck. The finals is a ton of fun and massively popular, so this is good news, but it's unclear whether developers actually want this to happen. The game shows up as unsupported for Steam Deck, and the reason is that the game's anti-cheat is not configured to support the Steam Deck. In situations like this, you run the risk of getting booted, so even though I will leave a link in the description, please do be aware of this risk. On the subject of anti-cheat, Steam Deck HQ is reporting that Elden Ring has been updated to have the anti-cheat working on the Steam Deck, meaning that you can now play the multiplayer for that game on the Steam Deck. That is awesome news. One game I really want to highlight on this channel is Songs of Conquest. This is a turn-based strategy game that I've seen a lot of people compare to Heroes of Might and Magic, but it certainly has a lot more modern amenities. In any case, Songs of Conquest recently got a deck verified badge, and the developers really went above and beyond to accommodate the Steam Deck. To celebrate, I'm going to give a key for this game to one person in the comments that tells me which of these is their favorite Steam Deck accommodations. Of course, there's gamepad support, including gamepad button prompts, a large text mode that makes text more legible on handhelds. That mode is set by default on the deck, text prompts that automatically invoke the virtual keyboard, gamepad specific tutorials and gameplay settings, and a battery saving system that throttles frame rates when you're in the menus or you're idling. Pretty awesome. Don't forget to comment your favorite feature for a key. Alright, that was a whole lot of Steam Deck news. I didn't even get to Steam Deck OLEDs apparently showing up in at least one GameStop retail store somewhere in America. That is cool news. Maybe we'll get to that next time, but until then, Deck Gang out. Goodbye!